I'm telling you guys are slipping. Not to mention, I already slipped a long time ago. Okay. All right. Yes, try this one. Okay. Folks online should see an online question. All right, so, all right, get your cards up. I printed the cards. I forgot to bring. Good move. Okay. Keep your fingers off the mark. There you go. Yeah. All right. Yes. All right. Okay. The folks online think it's A. The folks in class mostly think it's D. Anybody else want to participate? All right, that's it. Let's see. What do we think the answer is? Okay. Clear for a second. Well, you can't write at that level. Let me get rid of this. I'm going to. Okay. George is at secret and the documents are classified. So George is at a higher level. So he cannot write it. So write is out. And by the way, if write is out, then both is out. You might be able to read it. The document has cat and dog in it, and George is only cleared for cat. He's not cleared for dog. So dog is not. So his answer is, does he cat? No, he can't read it. So he can't read it. He can't write it. So I guess the answer is none. Where was that? Because the document's got dog. Let's go back up. Okay, come on. There it is. The document had categories cat and dog. George only had cat. So in order, so the document had extra categories. In other words, you can't read it because the information has information about dogs and cats. George is only cleared no information about cats. Does that make sense to everyone? Anybody have a question? Okay, good. Then if you understand that, then you'll surely be able to, understand this one. We'll try again. I thought I had them all. All right. Hope the answer is both, because every single person has answered both. And in fact, yes, that is the answer. Both, because both the person Alex and the document are at secret level. It's the same level, so you can both read and write things at your same level. And both of them have the same categories, cats, so they can both read it. So yes, the answer is both. Okay, good. Then moving along. That's all right. We're going to talk today about encryption. I know many of you have seen encryption in other classes. I'm sure we're going to do a quick review and then keep on going until you're entirely fooled by it all. So now encryption is a tool that we're going to use in security. It is not the end all of security, but it is an important tool in cybersecurity. So we're going to talk about that. And of course, it insists on confidentiality and integrity. Remember the CIA, confidentiality, integrity, and availability are the big goals of cybersecurity. Basically, the concept of encryption is you start with plain text, and plain text is what we call anything that you can easily use as it is. That can be a text file, or it can be a document, it can be an image, a video, any bits or bits, it doesn't matter, just a bunch of bits that you can use as they are. And then you put them through an encryption algorithm, giving it a key, and out comes ciphertext. Ciphertext looks like a random bunch of bits. You should not make any patterns in the bits until you run it through a decryption algorithm with the proper key, and out comes the plain text, which should be identical to the plain text you started with. So in the middle is the ciphertext that nobody can read unless they have the proper key in the decryption algorithm. And again, I think I said this, ciphertext is encrypted form. It looks like a random bunch of bits. Now, I want to talk about some other systems that make information look sort of like a random bunch of bits. We can talk about compression and encoding. They are not encryption, so let me cover those a little bit before we get into encryption. Okay. Data compression has become very common now. Everybody's encrypting things. The assignment you have to have done this week involves a zip file or an encrypted file, or excuse me, a compressed file that's also encrypted, but it's a compressed. A lot of things are compressed because it saves space, and sometimes it allows you to move other information all into one place. There are two flavors of compression. Lossless compression, which takes information and compresses it into some compressed file. And then when you decompress it, you get exactly what you had in the beginning. That's really good for text and documents, things you might read, PowerPoint slides. And then there's lossy compression. Lossy compression doesn't keep everything. When you compress it and you get it back out, it may not be everything that it was in the beginning. You might think, well, why do you want that? Because sometimes you don't need everything. JPEG is a good example of lossy compression. JPEG has several parameters when you compress something. One of them is the Q parameter, quality. What do you want? Start with a JPEG file. I start with a BMP, which is a bitmap file. The bitmap in this case was 219 kilobytes. And so I converted it to a JPEG, and it was 81 kilobytes, which is 37%. So keeping 100%, it looks real good. Then you can go to 50%, fit quality of 50. It's now much smaller. It's 18%. Before it was 37%. Now it's 6.7%. It's gotten much smaller yet. And I'll tell you, I can't see any difference between the two. You go down to 25, and still it's hard to tell any difference. Now it's only 4.2% of the original. So it's gotten much smaller. Still looks good. When you get down to 10, it starts to get a little fuzzy around the edges. Things aren't quite as clear. And then when you get down to 1, well, you can barely read it, but it's still there. JPEG understood, the people who made JPEG, journal, professional, something group, understood vision. And they know that in human vision, the intensity of the light is much more important than the color. That's why black and white pictures and black and white movies work perfectly well, because we can see the darkness, the intensity of the color, and we don't need the colors. Although the colors certainly add a lot. And so they use fewer bits to encode the color than they do the intensity. So these were clever people who did this. Okay. Let me talk a little bit about compression. I got an analogy. Imagine you want to compress things that you're going to text. So you want to send the word technology. Now, when I type technology into my phone to do a text message, I type TEC. And by that point, it gives me a whole bunch of suggestions. And maybe it gives me 9 suggestions. I see that the word technology is the second suggestion that my phone makes when I'm trying to send the word technology. So I send TEC2. Send that. Now that's a lot smaller than technology. To be precise, it's 40% of the original size. And then when I want to compress it, I see the words TEC, and I know the second suggestion is what I want. So it compresses it. It compresses it because English is predictable. A lot of times after I've been using my phone, I want to send a message to my wife, who I've sent many messages to, and I start off, and it knows always what the next word is I want to send. So because it's predictable, it's easy to compress. Compression takes the predictability, the randomness out of the text, and which shrinks it down a lot. There's another system, which is not compression, in fact, tends to make things bigger, which is encoding. Base 64 encoding is used a lot on the web because sometimes you want to send a data file or that has characters that don't quite go over a text line as well as you'd like. You might want to send to a graphical image. There are 8 bits in a byte, so you have 256 possible characters. When you look at your keyboard, there are 92 characters on your general keyboard. So there's a lot of bit patterns that are not represented on the keyboard. And so sometimes you just can't send these values across line. Punctuation, control characters, some of them are return commas. These all get in the way. You don't send those easily across a communications line if it's expecting just regular text. So we've got base 64 encoding. Base 64 encoding converts 8-bit bytes to 6-bit values, and it sends it only as letters and numbers. Here is how it's done. Okay, on the top, we've got 3 characters represented as 8-bit ASCII. ASCII, ASCII, American Standard Character Set for Information Interchange. Hey, I remembered it from work. But it's very popular 8-bit encoding used for most of your files, the web stuff. That's 8-bit. So there's the X, there's a carriage return, there's a line feed. Those are not, the carriage return line feed may not transmit correctly. So we take 3 8-bit values, 3 times 8 is 24, divide that into 6-bit values. You get 4 of them, 4 times 6 is 24. And then they got upper and lowercase letters. Upper and lowercase letters, there's 26 of each one of those, 26, 10 numbers, that's, if you've been counting, that's 62. You add 2 more characters, the plus and the slash, and you got 64 values. And so it encodes things in those 64 values, which are always good. Almost every system lets those go through. So this becomes WA0K, which doesn't make any sense until you base 64 decode it and put it back and see it. Slice and they use the equal sign when things that are not even, when you don't have an even multiple of 3 bytes, because it uses 3 bytes into 4 bytes. So, and it pads it. So if there's no equal sign, it means there's fit just perfectly. 2 equal signs mean there's 2 empty spaces. You can figure it out. Here's an example. I took comp 422 information privacy security and encoded it, and this is what you get. All upper and lowercase letters and numbers. We don't have any special characters here. You'll note that it's longer, of course, because it takes 3 bytes and converts it to 4 characters. So it's 4/3 the size, or 33% longer. But no funny characters there, and you can send that over most systems. All right, that's encoding. Because encoding just turns into characters that don't cause trouble in your system, and then compression makes things smaller. All right, let's talk about encryption. Okay, people are encrypting things for thousands of years. There's the Caesar cipher, which supposedly was used by Julius Caesar. Anybody who's read Sherlock Holmes, he sends encrypted things all over the place. Now, way back then, when they were doing encryption, it was very important that it was computationally efficient. If you didn't have a computer, you wanted to do something that you could do by hand, by a piece of paper and a pencil. You had to do it that way. Now with computers, we can really scramble it up. When you think of encryption, generally, you think of often there's 2 places you might use encryption. Data in motion when you're sending information over a network, or if you've got a file which you've encrypted, just staying there on your computer or on a server, staying the data at rest is encrypted. Some of the early encryption, the Caesar cipher was a shift cipher. This is where you take the characters and you shift them alphabetically, fixed number of times in a circular way. That's why your little decryption ring works so well. You can easily guess it by trying all the combinations. Okay, here's our original Caesar cipher encryption, which I didn't bother encrypting the spaces, which doesn't make any sense. If you shift it by one letter, you get this, which doesn't make any sense. Shift it by two letters, that doesn't make any sense. But you shift it by three letters, and suddenly, yes, you know what it means. So computers can try this very quickly, and so they can easily defeat the Caesar cipher. I can't say that one 10 times. All right, there are three types of attacks that a cryptanalysis might make on your system. One is ciphertext only. We'll assume at the beginning that they know the encryption algorithm, because most encryption algorithms are public and easily available. For ciphertext only, they've got a sample of the ciphertext. They've captured a message going between Alice and Bob, and they want to understand what it says, but all they have is this message. Now, known plain text is they know what this message said, and they said, yes, question about me. Yeah. Oh, on brute force, there's no key except there's a number between 1 and 26 is how many times you shift it. That's all you know. So yes, if you were using this, if you were going to send something to your generals in the time of Caesar, you'd send the message, and separately you'd tell them, shift it by 3 characters. And then they would know to shift it by 3 characters. And of course, back then, it would look like garbage and people you didn't know. It could take a lot of time to do it all by hand. It's easy with computers. There's no real key. Oops. Okay, and ciphertext only is when you just have a sample of ciphertext. You've captured the ciphertext and you're trying to figure out what it means. Known plain text is you know what the message was. You've got the plain text message and it's been encrypted. So you have a sample of something, you know what it was, and now it's encrypted. So that helps out a lot. And then there's chosen plain text where you can keep sending messages to the system. You can put in your plain text and have it encrypted. And you're trying to figure out what is the encryption key so that later you can take an unknown plain text, get the ciphertext, and decrypt it. Okay, besides this, another simple cipher is the substitution cipher. A lot of people think these are good, but they aren't. It's just character substitution. One character for another symbol. So you just have 26 symbols, you have 26 letters in the alphabet, and you substitute them one for one. They can be other letters. You can just substitute letter for letter. Took this out of a Sherlock Holmes novel, but you can substitute it for symbols. Yeah. Okay. Now, you might think this is pretty secure because if you're going to map 26 characters to another 26 characters, there's 26 factorial different ways to do it, and that's a big number. 4 times 10 to the 26, that's large. But it's not as good as you might think. There are some letters are used more often than others in English. E is the most commonly used letter in the English language by quite a bit. Here's the letter frequency chart. You can see things like letters J and Q and X are hardly used at all. Z, they don't get used very all. E, A, and T, and O, and those are very commonly used letters in English. So you can use that information to decipher something. Here's an example. What is that? Well, actually, to encode this, I simply changed the font to one of those silly fonts that they have. You can't tell what it is, but you can go through and do some substitutions. I took that gobbledygook and then took the letter frequency of the symbols and substituted and look for the most common symbol. Okay, both here. This M-like thing is the most common ciphertext symbol that appears. So I changed it for E and then just sorted the letters that appear in the ciphertext and by their frequency against the English ones and just mapped them back that. And I got this, which isn't very good, but you look carefully, go, well, oh, R must be a C. Also, that would make this Carolina. H must be an R. That would make this Nor. That means U is an H. You just keep doing this, and it doesn't take long before you've got it, and that's what it is. So a little bit of thinking, and you can get that. So letter frequency analysis will usually break most cipher substitution ciphers. It gets a little difficult if somebody's using letters that are not common. If Jane is sending a message to Zeke, you're going to get a lot of J's and Z's that you wouldn't otherwise see. But in general, it works. Okay, another guess for everybody. Let's try to oh, hang on here. All right, that you should see that online. Somebody put a guess out there. Okay. Looking. All right. Okay, that's your answer. Oh, you got it. I think them all. Oh, it's a toss-up between B and C. Yes, B and C are the most popular answers online and in person. So, yeah, people online can see the answer. Okay. What is the answer? Well, the answer is B, one-to-one mapping. It has to be a one-to-one mapping. One-to-one means for each character in the plain text, there's one character in the ciphertext. Or if you want to get to a bigger encryption, in each block of plain text goes to a unique block of ciphertext. It has to, because you have to be able to go backwards. You have to be able to decrypt. If one block of plain text went to multiple different ciphertext, well, then when you decrypt it, you'd have multiple blocks. Or worst one is if many blocks of plain text went to one block of ciphertext, same block of ciphertext, how would you know how to decrypt it? So it's one-to-one. Okay. There we are. There are all sorts of other clever by the way, knowing the Vigenère cipher will not be on the test, but way back, 1553, this guy made it up. It's pretty clever. Again, it's using a key of some information. You have, the key is just some text that people find, and you have the system, the message you want to send, and then you just add the characters, wrapping it around as it goes over the end. And you use some key, people frequently use a newspaper. Okay, the spy is supposed to know to get the New York Times, look at the, or look in the Bible, the King James Bible, starting, at this book, at this verse, and look at it and use that, because everybody doesn't attract any attention if the spy has that. It tends to work. You can get some character frequency analysis out of that. Sometimes the same plaintext character will be encrypted to the same character. It's a little more difficult, but statistical analysis can solve this one. There's the running key, which is just like the Vigenère, but you use a long key. Whereas the key is as long as that. Again, same thing. Here's our plain text. You can see flee at once, we are discovered. And then this is from the C textbook, the Kearney and Ritchie's textbook, and then you enter, you get the ciphertext. That sort of works. What works best, though, something very similar to that, is you just take a bunch of random bits in exclusive or those with the plain text. It has to be a random string of bits, not pseudo-random like you get from the rand function in your favorite programming language. It has to be real random. What they call cryptographically random. Many libraries now provide a cryptographically random system. They can get you a random numbers. Yes, sir. The key has to be as long as the text. You can't repeat it. You're repeating it, you're losing. So the key has to be as long as the text. Yeah, but you're not going to use it. I suppose you could put blanks on the end and with that. That might give away. So you probably want to truncate it right at the end of the message because you don't want to give away any information on the end. So the key should be exactly the same length as the cipher, as the plain text. Okay, you just read it. This is perfect encryption. If you don't ever repeat the key, and the key is exactly the same length, and it's completely random, then that's one of the reasons is if you start with the ciphertext, whatever key you want to use, you can get any possible outcome. So here's an example. If that's the ciphertext, you use this as a key, you get that output. Use this key, you get that output. So when you're trying to decrypt it, somebody can guess a whole bunch of keys. They can get any message they want to. But you have to use random passwords in the key. Now, the key has to be only used once. This might work if you're going to put the key in a diplomatic pouch and have a Marine take it to your consul in some other country so nobody can get to it, and then you'd be able to, then it would work. It's perfect. I think I said all that. Generally, an encryption algorithm uses two concepts, diffusion and confusion. Now, a key or a character substitution cipher does not do any diffusion. It takes one character and converts it to one character. Most of the encryption systems used nowadays spread the information over. That is, you take a set of like 8 bytes and encrypt them as a unit, as a block. And so each bit in that whole 8-byte thing involves in that. There's also, as we'll talk a little bit later, actually on Wednesday, no, today's Wednesday, next Monday, we'll talk about encryption modes where all the blocks are basically, so you spread the information out across many bytes. And it might be noted that with AES and DES, if you change just one bit of the input, say you have 128 input bytes, then you get completely different, about half the bits of the ciphertext will change. So it spreads out and changes everything. And then confusion is you change things, you rearrange the bits. You can break encryption algorithms into 2 separate classes. There's symmetric key, which is often called secret key, and there's asymmetric key or public key. Both of them are secure. Some people go, oh, this is not, asymmetric is not secure because the key is public. No, that's not true. It's just a symmetric key means that the key you use to encrypt is exactly the same as the key you use to decrypt. So the sender and receiver have to have the same key. And you got to get the key to them somehow. So it's, and there are ways to do that. We'll talk about that. Securely send the key. Public key encryption, the key to encrypt is different than the key to decrypt, although they're mathematically related. Okay, so here's an example for symmetric key encryption. You got your plain text, you got your secret key, goes through a encryption algorithm, comes out the ciphertext, which you can send across the network or store in a file or whatever. And when you get back that ciphertext, you can decrypt it with the same key. You might use that if you're encrypting something for yourself. If you're just going to encrypt it on your computer so nobody else can see it, except you want to be able to decrypt it, you might use symmetric key encryption. You only have to know one key, you encrypt it with that key, you decrypt it with that key. Asymmetric or public key encryption, there's a public key that everybody can get. So if you want to send something to somebody secretly, you take the public key and you encrypt the plain text with that public key, and now it's ciphertext. Anybody can do this. Anybody can encrypt something with the key, but you can't decrypt it. It takes the private key that is married with that public key in order to be able to decrypt it. So while everybody can get the public key, hopefully, only the receiver knows the private key. So only that receiver can decrypt and get the plain text. Now, there are all sorts of encryption standards, the data encryption standard, DS, the advanced encryption standards. These are well-known standards. And some people think, well, I'll make up my own system and nobody will know it. Well, yeah, but it might not be a good system. The advantage of the well-known standards is that people have carefully studied this. In cryptanalysis, have gone over these and make sure that they work correctly. And if you're going to send something to somebody else is going to have to know how to decrypt it. So they're going to have to know the algorithm. We have encryption standards so you can encrypt something, and anybody can decrypt it as long as they know the key. All they need to know is the key. Algorithm is well known. Okay, another question here. Let's try this. And okay, hopefully you can see that one. All right. Idea about it. And next time, I'm really going to hope to have more cards to hand out. I printed more cards. They're sitting safely on my desk at home. Okay, A and B. Well, nobody says it doesn't matter. One person online thought it didn't matter. We're evenly split in class. A couple more people think you should compress first and then encrypt. Well, that's good. Well, got that. The answer, get this, is you want to compress, then encrypt. Because compressing it takes the predictability in the system, the entropy in the system, and compresses that out. When you encrypt something, it looks like a random bunch of bits. Random bits are very hard to compress. There's no pattern in them that you can take out to decrypt. So, to compress. So if you encrypt and then compress, it'll hardly compress at all. But if you compress it, you can sometimes compress quite a bit down to just like 10% of its original size, and then you can encrypt that. You can encrypt either way, but compression will work much better if you do it first. Okay. All right. Encryption performance. Again, there are public key encryptions and the symmetric and asymmetric, public key or secret key. The public key encryptions that we have these days are generally much slower. RSA is most commonly known asymmetric or public key encryptions. Also the Diffie-Hellman system. Those are, and they're much, much slower than the symmetric key. The symmetric keys are easy to implement in hardware. In fact, your Intel processors, your AMD processors, your ARM processors usually have instructions that help you encrypt or decrypt with AES. So and that makes it very fast. I could also do AES with software, but the RSA ones are only done in the software, and they're much slower. That's important because we have some systems that switch between them just for speed. The longer you have of your key, the longer key, the harder it is to defeat the encryption. For an idea, imagine you have a key that's only 2 bits long. So there's only 4 possible combinations. You can try all 4 possible combinations and see what one of them comes out and works well. You can usually tell what the right message is. So the longer the key is, the more secure it is. Now, for asymmetric algorithm, the encryption key and the decryption key are related. They're created through a mathematical formula that we'll talk about in a few minutes. So you can't just use any bunch of bits. Typically, for symmetric key, they just take a random bunch of bits. You use random bits, and that's what you generate. There are several popularly used algorithms and their key bits. DES, the data encryption standard, has been around for several decades, uses 56 bits. 56 bits was decided to be far too small. DES, triple DES, sometimes called DES3, uses 2 or 3 56-bit. So if you use 2 of them, if they're 56 bits times 2 is 112 bits, so you use 112 bits. AES comes in 3 flavors, where it uses 128-bit keys, 192-bit keys, or 256-bit keys. And then RSA has keys of variable lengths, commonly used are 512 bits, 1K, 2K, and now sometimes even 4K bits. Really long keys, but that tends to make it more secure. Okay, let me talk about AES, DES, because those are substitution permutation ciphers. They have a pattern like this where you think of the data going in the top and going through these separate things. They go through a substitution where they exchange bits for bits. They have a rearrangement of the bits. They take this bit, move there, that bit moves the other place, and then they exclusive order the bits with the key. Both DES and AES are substitution permutation ciphers. And again, here's an idea. First of all, you go through a key, it's going to exclusive OR the input with the key bits, and you get the output. Then you go through a substitution, these little S boxes, as they're called. The S boxes are a substitution. And then they rearrange the bits. You can see the bit, this bit goes over there, that bit goes over there. They just rearrange the order of the bits. In this particular example, which I took from this textbook, the permutation looks the same, but it doesn't have to be. In fact, in AES and DES, they use different permutation patterns for each one. But that's basically how they work. They're a bit more advanced than this. We'll talk about it in a minute. But they exclusive OR, substitute, rearrange, do that. And this particular example has 3 cycles of that. Goes through 3 phases of the exclusive OR, substitution, and rearrangement. Those S boxes, again, are just substitutions. They start with here's an example of 3 bits. There are 8 possible combinations. 2 to the 3 is 8, so 8 possible combinations. And then there's kind of a randomly chosen set of outputs. So if the input bits are 0, 1, 0, then the output is 1, 1, 0. Sometimes the S bits will either expand or contract. Here's an example of the contract where they 3 bits in, only 2 bits out. You can bet that someplace else there's a substitution that goes 2 bits in, 3 bits out. Makes it work. Okay, here's another poll. Oh, wait. Sorry, here's we have a poll for this. No, for reasons I don't want to admit, I don't have any more polls online for these. Missed this one. Sometimes that happens. So we'll try it on class. All right. Okay. A and B. Okay. The answer, this box is a substitution cipher. So back look at it. Yes, it just, here's a better example. It takes this 3-bit, think of it as a 3-bit character, and substitute of that 3-bit character. It's just a substitution cipher. It's pretty simple. This is a substitution cipher with a compression. So yeah, nobody voted magic. All right. And the permutations can permit like 32 bits to 32 bits, or they can expand it. Yes, we have a question.
Oh, shift, it's like the first one is 0, 0, 0. you go towards the right, it's right there on the bottom. And then you do that.
Well, no, in this case, to the right of 00 is 001, and 001 is over here. It's not quite a shift. I didn't mean, I made it up, and I just made it up randomly. I tried to be random. By the way, humans are not good at random. You might think you can make random things, but turns out humans think patterns. We're really good at that. So if you want to do random stuff, use a random number generator. They're much better than humans are at making random numbers. Okay. Permutations again, rearranging the bits. Sometimes you can go like 32 bits in, 32 bits out, and rearrange them. Sometimes you like 32 bits in, 48 bits out, and some bits might go to two locations. Like in this example, this third bit goes over here and it goes over there. Okay. And then they have other stages where they have like many bits go to fewer bits. You can go either way. In AES and DES, every iteration, every phase of the encryption, again, there's different number of stages. They take the original key and they put it through some permutation. So the key is different every time. Okay, the data encryption standard has been around for a long time, been around since 1977, developed by IBM and accepted by the Bureau of Standards as a standard encryption algorithm. It uses a 56-bit key. And it encrypts 64-bit blocks or a double word. Very popular. It's a permutation cipher. It's one of the we looked at before. There are 16 stages. It uses the right and the left half and rearranges them back and forth and rearranges the bits. Here's an example. By the way, you don't have to memorize this, but you need the general concept. It takes the left and exclusive orders it with the result. It takes the right, goes through expansion up to 32 bits up to 48. Exclusive orders it with the key, goes through a substitution, goes through a permutation, 32 to 32 bits, and down to 32 bits, and back. And exclusive orders it with the left side, and then keeps doing it. So the right and left side keep messing up each other. The keys again are split up and rearranged, and rotated, and exclusive ordered, and until you get it. Now, the 56-bit key is too short. Several years, 1998, that's quite a while ago, the Electronic Frontier Foundation, which is still out there, built a machine to brute force, to basically guess DES encryption. And at that time, they could do it in 48 hours. Now, of course, they can guess much, much faster. So DES is not very useful. It's too short. It's been deprecated. The Bureau of Standards says nobody should use it. Nobody should be creating new algorithms with it. And systems that use DES or triple DES should stop doing it and change to something better like AES. There's a couple weaknesses. We won't go into that. They found that you can guess with 2 to the 47 chosen plaintext pairs. So 2 to the 47 is a big number, but it's a lot less than all the possible. There's 56-bit keys. It's a lot less than 256. 2 to the 56, excuse me. Okay, don't worry about it. How long would it take? You can do 1 million keys a second. How long would it take to try? Well, it turns out, did the arithmetic, takes 4.25 years. Well, that's using your laptop. That might be able to do. I just made up 1 million guesses a second. Now, supercomputer, the fastest supercomputer out there has 8.5 million cores. So you could try all possible keys in 15.47 seconds. So that's reasonable. I could, if I needed to break it, if I was the government and I needed to know what this message said, I could, 15 seconds is not too bad, but that gives me the answer. Triple DES is using DES 3 times to encrypt something. So how it works is you only use two keys. Triple DES takes just two keys, 112 bits. So you take the original plain text and you encrypt it with key 1. Then you decrypt it with key 2. Then you encrypt it with key 3. Turns out that key 1 and key 3, so you can encrypt it with key 3, decrypt it with key 2, encrypt it with key 1 again, and you get really messed up. You don't want to use, of course, you did. Some people think you can encrypt with key 1, decrypt it with key 2. It's not as good as you think. Triple decryption, instead of taking twice as many, because 57 bits, you think it's 2 to 57 guesses. Turns out that it only takes 2 to 57 plus 1, 2 to 58. Yes, question. No, use a different key. This is, yes, you encrypt it with one key, then decrypt it with a different key. Because you encrypt it with the same key, you get, yes, you're right, we get back to where you were. But we're using a different key, and then we go back and encrypt it. But it's again been deprecated. Nobody's supposed to use it anymore. There are much better things. The algorithm that people are using, the secret key or private key algorithm everybody's using, is the advanced encryption, the AES, also known as the Rheindahl algorithm, made by Riemann Endowment. I can see where the name came from, Belgium, 25 years ago or so. And it's now the US government had a contest, who could make the best encryption algorithm. Many people put out algorithms, and the government chose this one. It's interesting that they chose one made by foreign analysis. It's available everywhere, royalty free, anybody can use it. It takes 128 bits of plain text and encrypts it into 228 bits of ciphertext. The keys can be 128 bits or 194 bits, or if you really want to be secure, 256 bits. It is, again, one of those substitution permutation ciphers. And if you use the 128-bit keys, it does 10 rounds, and 14 rounds if you use 256-bit keys. So it gets more secure with you. Okay, let me briefly go over how this works. Okay, again, I will not ask you the details of this in an assignment, but I do expect you to understand that it's a permutation substitution cipher. Oh, okay, they got initial stage, they got some stage, and final. Here, we'll just look at the pictures. Okay, they have an exclusive OR. So you just take, they use this 4x4 bit arrangement, which they call a stage, and they take a stage of the plain text, the exclusive OR with the keys, and you get the output. Then we have a substitution where you have, again, a substitution box. You take this and you substitute it and you get that. Okay. Then we do shift. They have a shift where you can see everything is shifted slightly. And then they mix it up. They do a permutation. So when they multiply it, polynomial multiplication gets really weird. You can do this in software. It also works really well in hardware. And again, each stage is implemented by an Intel instruction. There's an Intel AES instruction that does one stage. And of course, if you're doing a 128-bit, you call that instruction 10 times. If you're doing 192 bits, 12 times. 256-bit key, you do it 14 times. Now, Snowden, if you remember, several years ago, this fellow was working for the NSA and then took a bunch of documents, released them to WikiLeaks, and much to the dismay of the NSA, and a lot of people got the information. He said that their NSA was looking at techniques to defeat AES. Well, I hope they're looking into techniques. I mean, there are security people. They should be looking into how this can work. I mean, I would be disappointed in my government if they weren't looking into it. Have they found anything? That he didn't say they had, but I hope they were looking. They found things to make it a little faster. And some cryptanalysts say, oh, if I have lots of stuff, I can make it 4 times faster instead of looking at 2 to the 56. No, excuse me. 256. So you're using 256 bit keys. Then there are 2 to the 256 possible different keys. Well, they say you can look at it 4 times faster. Well, how big is 4 times faster? Well, since we can't do this line, how big is that? Is it? What's that? Well, it turns out that 4 times faster is 2 to the 254. 4 times faster is 2 to the 2. If you need to divide that, it's just subtraction. Yeah, okay. So it's, yes, 2 to 2. Well, 2 to the 254 is a really big number. Any system available today to do that is going to take more than your lifetime to do it. Okay, that was secret key or symmetric key, where the encryption key and the decryption key are the same. Then there's public key algorithms, or asymmetric, where the public key is different from the private key. Again, everybody can know the public key. You can make them available, but only one person is supposed to know the secret key. The owner of that key knows the private key, and they can read it. The RSA algorithm, which is for Rivest, Shamir, and Alderman, makes the RSA algorithm. By the way, Rivest, if you, in the algorithms class here at A&T, they use a book by Rivest. I think it's the big white book. That's the same Rivest. So this guy seems to know what he's talking about. Now, they made it in 1977. Turns out this fella up in the NSA, Clifford Cox, developed it in 1973. But the NSA doesn't always tell everybody what they're doing, and so nobody knew about it. RSA is the most commonly used public key algorithm. AES is the most commonly used private key or symmetric key, and RSA is the most commonly used asymmetric algorithm. There are others that are used a lot, and they're in the public domain. Anybody can use it without any copyright. Let's go over how it works. Okay. They use modular arithmetic. Say M is the message. It's a bunch of bits. And you can look at it as a bunch of bits, and any bunch of bits can be thought of as a number. It's a big integer number. And you raise that number to the power E mod n. So you do this, and you get the remainder of division by n. C is the encryption. It's the ciphertext. You can send C to the receiver, and the receiver takes that, and they raise it to the power D mod n. And they get the message at the end. So you start with the message. So that's all it is. N is known by everybody, and E can be known by everybody, but D is the secret. Okay? All right, how does this work? You start by picking 2 big prime numbers, which we'll call P and Q. And so you have to go out and find 2 prime numbers. There are algorithms that will tell you if a number is probably prime. You can run it multiple times, and it keeps getting more and more accurate. So the first time you run it, they'll tell you with a 50% probability it's a prime number. And then you run it again and say, well, with a 25% probability, 75% probability it's a prime number. And then an 87.5% probability, it gets bigger and bigger. And you run it 64 times, and even though, no, you're not 100% sure, it's very, very likely it's a prime number. So you find 2 great big prime numbers, and you multiply them together, and that gives you n. N is usually about 1,000 bits or maybe 2,000 bits long. So you start with 2 primes that are like 1,000 bit long, multiply them together to get an n, which is 2,000 bits long. Then you also calculate this totem value, which is where you take 1 minus p times 1 minus q, and you multiply them together to get the totem of n. Then you find E, which has the greatest common divisor between E and n is 1. In other words, you find an E that doesn't divide into n or into the totem, and that's your E. That's the E value that you use to encrypt. Going back, that's the E that everybody uses. Then you got to find a D that's the modular inverse of E. So remember, the inverse is the number you multiply to get 1. Now we're dealing with modular arithmetic, where things roll over. Okay, let's say we have, yeah, you take two numbers, you multiply them together. For example, 11 and 4, no, 11 and 3. 11 and 3 are modular numbers. 11 times, 3 times n. Wait, trust me, it works. Okay, yes, modular, two numbers you multiply together. So the public key is N and E, the secret key is D, and you have to use N, of course, but so everybody knows E and N. Let's look at an example here. I've got two not real big prime numbers. Multiply them together, and we get N, there's your number, and then we subtract it. So it's 100 times 112, and you get, yes, 112,000. Should be noted, of course, this is always an even number, because if these are primes, they're odd. When less, it's even. Then we choose E, which is this greatest common divisor, E, and this is 1. Then we have to find an inverse, and 6597 is if you multiply 6,597 times 3,533 divided by 1,100, and the remainder is 1. I ran it through an algorithm and checked. I didn't do that by hand. Okay, so we've got an E, a D, and an N. And we'll try it out. So we take M, raise the message to that power, mod this, and you get a number, 5,761. You've got your calculator and try it, it works. And then you raise that to the D number, modulo N, and you get the resulting. That's the answer. It works. Now, multiplying M to the E mod N, you can multiply M times itself E times, and then mod N. It's slightly easier to multiply M times N, and then mod N to truncate it. Keeps it small. Otherwise, it gets to be a very, very large number. This has a runtime of order E, if you have E numbers. So that's kind of big. Linear with that can be kind of slow. There are, in fact, much better ways to do it. You can do it that are log E. I have an algorithm here. So you just, and basically it goes through shifting the number over, and if the bit is 1, you multiply it. If the bit is not 1, you leave it. And this does log N or log E, so it's much, much faster. Okay, again, you want really big values of P and Q, because the larger N is, the harder it is. Well, it's very hard to factor a number, a large number. Well, I mean, small numbers you factor. What are the factors of prime factors of 35, 5, and 7? I remember that from first grade, but maybe second grade. But to get really, really large numbers, it's hard to do. You have to go through an awful lot of numbers before you can figure it out. It's even hard for fast computers to do. So, by the way, some people say it's NP complete. No, it's not. But well, that's neither here nor there. So if N is really big, then it's log base 2 N length. And we know that M, the message size, has to be less than N because we're doing mod N. That means you can reduce everything down to a number that's up 0 to 1 less than N. So it has to go that way. Otherwise, you wouldn't have enough values. Okay. All right. Performance, we're not going to do this, but the answer here, what's the fastest? Well, remember, RSA is slow. AES is faster than DES, and they're both faster than RSA. The answer here is B. AES is faster than DES, and they're all faster than RSA. Okay, here's another example. Bigger numbers, really big. See, let me see what works. That's it. Okay. Now, we've had other security classes. Some people think, oh, I will have them implement RSA or DES. That's pointless. Now, there's a whole lot of libraries out there that have been tested, that are secure, that people have done this. It's unimportant for you to know you should have the general idea how it works. You might want to know some of the parameters involved. You better understand that the AES is a permutation substitution cipher, and that RSA uses exponentiation, mod, a number. That's important, but the actual details are not that important. If they are, they want you to do something, I'll give you the algorithm. Okay, but again, you need to know the efficiency and where to use the algorithms. What algorithm works best in what situation? Oh, this summer I amused myself by drawing pictures. Alice and Bob are sending messages. So I've got tales of Alice and Bob. You go out to the class website, Comp 422, Comp 620.online, and there's a link to Tales of Alice and Bob, and you can amuse yourself and learn about encryption out there. Like I said, in all the textbooks, there's always Alice is sending a message to Bob. So I drew. You can see the extent of my art ability. All right, advertisement real quick. Spent some time with the Red Cross. So I want to advertise the Red Cross because they go out there and they save people's lives. Well, if your house burns down, the Red Cross will come and help you. I point out that about a third of the people in Guilford County are African Americans. I've asked the folks at the Red Cross how many blood donors. They say only about 1% of the blood donors. It's very helpful if you need blood to get blood from somebody of the same ethnic group. So think about that. We want to help you out. So you can go out to www.redcross.org and sign up and save somebody's life. So, I mean, yes.
There's also blood drive.
Yes, somebody mentioned there's a blood drive on campus. That's also an opportunity. You know, some people can't give blood. You know, they've had diseases that disqualify them, or some people are too small. Not me, but yes, other things. But most people can give blood. You go out there and sign up, they're going to take you. So think about that. Okay, key cracking assignment. Remember, start it. Don't wait till Friday night. By the way, I'm going to the Greensboro Grasshoppers ball game Friday night, so I will not be available to answer questions Friday night. You might contact a TA or try doing this. Before you run away, I have one more thing to show you. Let's close this. Go over to this. And press that button. Hang on. Share the screen again. Maybe if it likes me. Okay, we're back. Yes. Let me just show you some of the results from that introductory survey. This will not be on the test, but you might be interested. Okay, who's out there? Oh, a little less than a third of you are Comp 422. The rest of you are Comp 620. Although you might look and see that, more than a third of you are undergraduates, which means there's a bunch of undergraduates taking Comp 620, which is certainly allowed. There will be some splits later on between assignments for 422 and assignments for 620. If you're an undergraduate and you're in 620, you got to do the 620 thing, even though you're undergraduate. About a little less than half the people are MS. And then there's the cyber certificate students. These are students who are in the post-baccalaureate degree program for cybersecurity. There's not undergraduates in computer science who are doing the cybersecurity option. Participation. Okay. A little more than a third said you're going to do it in person. Synchronous online means you're watching me Zoom. Right now I see 17 people are on Zoom. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21 people are here. Okay, there's 97 people registered for the class. If there were a third of you, that would be 35, I think. There's half of that. Online, that looks a little bit better than a quarter, but yet there's only 17. And I think online, okay. Yes. So perhaps, I hope people are watching it online, watching these YouTube videos and are participating some way. Remember, I don't take attendance, but watching the videos and doing and reading the material does help. By the way, you're supposed to read chapter 10 for this week. Well, programming languages, Python was everybody's favorite. Everybody liked more Python people than anything else. Then there was Java and C++ are popular. Goes down. Few people know. There are a bunch of people who never programmed, about 19% of you. So we're going to not have programming assignments for them. The introductory survey had a couple of secret agendas. If you said you know how to program, and a programming assignment comes up, you're going to have to do the programming assignment. If you said you didn't know how to program, there'll be a separate assignment for you. I also asked what kind of computer you used. A lot of people most people use Windows, a couple of Mac. There's one person out there with a Chromebook, good luck, and a couple of people Linux. I figure if you're doing Linux, then you know how to do it anyway. I also asked about people's phones. Everybody had a password on their phone. My wife doesn't have a password on her phone. Anybody can get to it. Most people use facial recognition. That's what I have, facial recognition and a password on my phone. Some people use fingerprints. My phone doesn't do that. So, yes, we'll talk about both of those can be overcome. We'll talk about that later on. Yes, question? Okay, twin scout, okay. Try taking a picture of somebody, holding the picture up in front of your phone. Works, I've tried it. So, yes, you can open up somebody's phone with a picture of them. And usually it's not too hard to take a person's picture. And you can find them online, or you can just snap your camera, take your phone out there and snap a picture when they're not watching, and blow it up to the right size, print it, hold it in front of the phone, or your computer's camera, whatever, and it will often work. Okay. By the way, if you said your native language was English and you have to write something, I assume you can write it in proper English. If you said it was another language, most of them are others, I will give you some slack. Okay. So that's it for today. Chapter 10, talking more about encryption on Monday. Make sure you do the assignment because start early. It's easy. It doesn't have any real, it's not like you have to know a lot to do it, but there can be gotchas. There are some challenges, maybe challenges on some people's Mac. They had problems, and some people's Windows systems had problems. I have some instructions that we've determined should work for Macs. If you're having trouble, let me know. We'll work through it. Unless you have any other trouble, that's it for today. See you on Monday. Have a nice week. All right. See you next time.